watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, Gaza truce extended by 48 hours. 11 more hostages freed on day 4. Efforts on in full swing to rescue 41 trapped workers in India's Uttarakhand. Rat hole mining team deployed for rescue operations. It was glitz and glamour galore at the 54th edition of International Film Festival of India that comes to a close today. The 10-day cinematic extravaganza leaves film enthusiasts thrilled and spellbound. And India to take on Australia in the third T20 international match in northeastern Indian city of Guwahati. India lead the series 2-0. A truce between Israel and Hamas in Gaza extended by 2 days. According to Qatar and the United States, Hamas will release another 20 women and children to Israel over the next 2 days as part of the agreement. U.S. National Security spokesman John Kirby says with the truce extended, more hostages can be freed from Gaza. DD India's correspondent Benji Hire has the details on this.
Yes, thus far more than 50 hostages have been let go and returned to their families, weeks after being abducted during Hamas's deadly attack on Israel. They include a little American girl, Abigail, who turned just 4 years old while in captivity. Her parents were slaughtered in front of her on October 7th. Dozens of young Palestinians have been released from Israeli prisons in exchange as part of this wider swap. And now another diplomatic breakthrough with this deal. Just hours before the 4-day humanitarian pause in the fighting was due to expire, Qatar announced Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 2-day extension, a move that's been welcomed by the White House.
This humanitarian pause has already brought a halt to the fighting, together with a surge of humanitarian assistance. Now, in order to extend the pause, Hamas has committed to releasing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We would, of course, hope to see the pause extended further, and that will depend upon Hamas continuing to release hostages.
In a statement on Monday, President Joe Biden said he wouldn't stop until all of the hostages held by Hamas terrorists are released. We are taking full advantage of the pause in fighting, he adds, to increase the amount of humanitarian aid moving into Gaza, and we will continue our efforts to build a future of peace and dignity for the Palestinian people. Israel, which credits the US in helping broker the deal, confirmed that for every 10 hostages released, it's willing to offer an extension of another day to the truce. The administration here hoped to see the pause extended further, but is not calling for a full ceasefire. Benji Hire in Washington, reporting for DD India.
11 hostages were released by Hamas on 4th day of the truce in Gaza. An Israeli army video said to show Red Cross vehicles carrying the Israeli hostages crossed from Gaza towards the territory of Israel on the 4th day of a deal between Israel and Hamas. Qatar said the newly released hostages, all dual citizens, included 3 with French nationality, 2 with German nationality, and 6 Argentine citizens. The Israeli army released a video on Monday showing containers carrying fuel and cooking gas at the Gaza border. 8 containers carrying diesel fuel and cooking gas were transferred from Egypt to UN humanitarian aid organizations in Gaza as part of the truce deal. The fuel and cooking gas are designated for the operation of vital humanitarian infrastructure in Gaza. Israel said that 200 humanitarian aid trucks are also being dispatched to international aid organizations operating in Gaza. The trucks only carry food, water, shelter equipment, and medical supplies. NATO ministers of foreign affairs. The meeting is taking place on Tuesday and Wednesday at the headquarters in Brussels. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also reached Belgium on Monday. Blinken will be attending Ukraine-focused meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday in Brussels and Skopje, where foreign ministers from NATO and the Organization for Peace and Security in Europe are gathering. He will be highlighting the NATO alliance's ongoing support for Ukraine in its war with Russia in Europe. Blinken will return to Israel and the West Bank to discuss further extension of the Gaza ceasefire. The gathering of the world's biggest military alliance, NATO, comes as some countries express concern of a wider regional conflict in the wake of a war between Israel and Hamas. From Berlin, DD India correspondent Trent Murray has the latest.
Well, foreign ministers from NATO member countries come together at a time of increased conflict and concern in Europe and the region more broadly. We know for that reason it is a jam-packed agenda ahead for these ministers as they get together. Jens Stoltenberg, the leader of NATO, said that Israel and the situation with Gaza and Hamas would be one of the top agenda items. He called for an extension of that ceasefire in order to try and allow more hostages to be released. He also called on Iran to rein in what he described as their proxies, Syria, Yemen, the Islamist Shiite group Hezbollah in Lebanon, saying that if they continue to get involved, then it could spill into a wider regional conflict. We also know Ukraine will form a very large part of the discussions. There is very real concern here in Europe that going into the winter, the Ukrainians could continue to be bogged down and could even face ammunition shortages, which could hamper their efforts to try and reclaim territory lost to the Russians over the past 18 months or so. And then, of course, there is the discussion of Sweden, the newest NATO member, or certainly wants to be. It's still not able to get into the military alliance yet, and that is because President Erdogan of Turkey has still not signed off on their application. We understand the legislation is currently in the Turkish parliament, but several Turkish media sources are saying they do not expect it to be approved in time for this foreign ministers meeting wrapping up. Trent Murray for DD India, Berlin.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to address the World Russian People's Council, with the Kremlin emphasizing the speech's significance. Putin is expected to urge unity against Western pressure. DD India's correspondent Dasha Charnishova reports from Moscow.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to take part in the plenary session of the World Russian People's Council. The organization is celebrating its 30th anniversary, and the central theme is the present and the future of the Russian world. According to the Kremlin, President Putin will be joining by the video link. Announcing the president's speech, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that every speech by the Russian president is very important. Deputy head of the World Russian People's Council, Konstantin Malafeyev, has earlier said that the speech by the Russian president will be devoted to, quote, the situation of the Russian world after the victory of Moscow in the conflict with Ukraine. Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Russia, representatives of the Russian Orthodox Church, state authorities, public associations, scientists and cultural figures are expected to discuss the issues of migration, education, demography, ideology and economy at the two-day event. On Monday, President Putin addressed the Primakov readings, an international forum of experts. In his speech, he said a new, fairer and more democratic system of international relations was emerging to meet the needs of the world majority. Putin is also expected to hold a big press conference later this year. Dasha Chernyshova reporting in Moscow for DD India.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has approved a significant increase in military spending, with a 30% of the budget directed towards the armed forces in 2024. Now, this comes as Moscow continues to focus more resources on the war in Ukraine, with defense and security spending set to reach 40% of the budget. Russia has an ambitious 2024 revenue target of 35.1 trillion rubles next year. That is a 22.3% planned increase year-on-year, based on assumptions of high oil prices. Analysts suggest that the government may need to raise business taxes if revenue assumptions are overly optimistic. And Russian forces are intensifying their drive to capture the eastern Ukrainian town of Avdiivka on Monday. The town's top official said Russia is trying to advance on all sides after weeks of fighting. The head of Avdiivka's military administration, Vitaly Barbash, said things in Avdiivka sector have become even tougher and the intensity of clashes has been increasing for some time. Much of the fighting has focused on the industrial zone and the cooking plant. Russian troops have been pressing land and air-based attacks on Avdiivka since mid-October. At a news conference in Helsinki, Finland's Prime Minister Petteri Orpo said that the flow of asylum seekers from Russia amounted to a hybrid attack against the European Union. Prime Minister Orpo added that he considered it a national security issue and expected more migrants to come to the border via Russia. He said further measures would be taken if necessary to stem the flow after closing all but one entry point in recent weeks. Some 900 asylum seekers from nations including Afghanistan, Kenya, Morocco, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria and Yemen have entered Finland from Russia in November.
We consider this is an issue of national security. In our case, Russian authorities have allowed persons without necessary documents to travel to Finland. We have continued to see that Russian border service is even assisting them to reach Finland. Due to the rapid increase of the illegal entry, strong measures have been needed. We have closed all our border stations on the eastern border except one. And we are ready to close the last one if needed.
The British government is investing $62 million in restoration of peat, a layer of soil made of decaying organic matter. Peat acts as a carbon sink, absorbing the element and helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But as Julia Chapman reports from Dorset, most of England's peat has been dried out and is in urgent need for re-wetting.
These waterlogged heaths cover 12% of the UK's landmass. They provide a natural habitat for peat, a layer of soil which forms in very wet conditions. But over time, the land has been drained for farming and forestry.
These heathlands, they're really nutrient poor, so people had to make a living from them, had to improve the grazing for them or the perceived improvement of the sites. Now we understand that draining our wetlands is not the right way to go at all. Draining our wetlands does all sorts of damage to them.
Across England, efforts are underway to reverse that process. The county of Dorset has received funding as part of a government initiative.
But there's a little wetland sitting right here. This is a lovely wetland.
Yeah. It's aimed at helping the country reach its goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Peat is a major contributor to that ambition. When it's healthy and wet, it absorbs carbon rather than releasing it. The government has committed to restoring 35,000 hectares of peatland by the end of this parliament. But with 87% of England's peatland degraded, there's a lot of ground to cover. That degradation has knock-on effects. As temperatures rise and wildfires become more frequent, dried-out peat spreads flames faster. Keeping the water table high mitigates that risk and has the bonus benefit of preventing flooding too.
The ways we can restore peat is we can restore the wetness of the sites. So we want to sort of reconnect the groundwater levels with the natural surface layer. We can block up drainage ditches, we can form peat dams, we can do lots of interventions that will help slow and block water, so timber damming, putting in heather bales, woody debris, anything that we can sort of start to block up and enable that water to be locked up for longer.
It's estimated that restoring all of Britain's peatlands could cost as much as $27 billion. But experts say the cost of inaction is far higher. Julia Chapman in Dorset, England, reporting for DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition. After the break, India shines as global trade and investment destination at India International Trade Fair that witnessed over 1 million visitors on its last day. Indian states illuminated on the occasion of Dev Deepavali on the occasion of Kartik Purnima. We tell you the significance ahead. Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra progresses to Indian state of Odisha. We tell you ahead more.
A platform for the developing world, amplifying the voice of the global south with a focus on the growing economies, resolving the conflicts, showcasing the culture, tradition, heritage and diversity. Watch Voice of the Global South at these times on DD India.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. Let's get you more updates. Efforts are on in full swing to rescue 41 workers trapped inside the under-construction tunnel in North India's Uttarakhand. Rat hole mining specialists initiated manual drilling through the debris on Monday. Auger machine is being used for pushing the pipe. So far, about 2 meters of manual drilling has been completed. The authorities have also deployed artificial intelligence and robotics in the rescue mission that will monitor the health of the trapped workers, also to study the environment inside the tunnel. This will provide real-time data to the rescue authorities for better planning of the rescue mission. Micro-tunneling expert Chris Cooper says things are looking very positive.
It's gone very well last night. They've just crossed 50 meters. There's about, let's say it's about 5 or 6 meters to go. They're just putting another pipe in, so we're expecting some good results later today. So we haven't had any obstacles last night, and it's looking very positive sometime today.
In a virtual session at the inaugural India Global Forum Middle East and Africa 2023, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman demanded tangible action on climate funding and technology transfer ahead of COP28. The event themed Unleashing Ambitions brought together various leaders to explore better opportunities between India, the Middle East and Africa. Addressing the challenges faced by developing and emerging market economies, India's finance minister highlighted the need for concrete outcomes at COP28. She insisted for a decisive action focusing on funding and technology transfer. The event showcased India's pace of change and growth, positioning the country as an opportunity for global business and collaboration. As the world anticipates COP28, Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's call for concrete decisions resonates as a crucial step towards addressing climate challenges.
I would think the conversations can happen, a lot of talk can happen, but eventually COP28 should show the direction both for transport technology and for the actual funding, be it a blended finance, public and private partnership or philanthropies coming in, but finance it is required.
Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi hosted the 42nd edition of India International Trade Fair from 14 to 27th November. Over 1 million visitors thronged the pavilions during the fair. With over 3,500 exhibitors from across the world, the trade fair projected India as a global trade and investment destination. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh gets us more.
India International Trade Fair concluded on Monday at Bharat Mandapam. This was the biggest trade fair that Delhi had ever witnessed. After successful organization of G20 Leaders Summit under India's presidency, the gates of the newly developed Bharat Mandapam were open for the public for the mega trade fair on 14th November. While India International Trade Fair represents a melting pot of culture and commerce, it is also a dynamic platform to tell the India story. India as a preferred destination for global trade and investment. The trade fair this year was bigger and better organized than ever before. IITF 2023 was spread over an expansive 110,000 square meters of area, while last year's event was held across 73,000 square meters. Over 3,500 exhibitors from India and abroad participated in the fair. Representatives from 13 countries took part in the fair. All 14 exhibition halls, along with the open area and the convention center area, were included. Over 1 million visitors thronged the fair this year. For convenience of visitors, special parking facility was arranged in the basement for vehicles. Dedicated mobile app provided all exhibition, tickets and navigation related information.
This year we have got a wonderful response from people. It makes us feel very happy, when customer is satisfied with your perfumes and there is a smile on their face. We have got a good response and a huge demand from retailers and wholesalers as well.
This time, since the Bharat Mandapam has been inaugurated by our PM, we feel so proud because of all the cleanliness and the other stalls which has been increased these days. So it's very, interesting coming here, and we feel very proud of this. We even feel that whether it's India or we are in some foreign country, because all the new infrastructure which we have been provided is very good and fine.
IITF, with business-to-business and business-to-customer components, is one of the largest integrated trade fairs in the world. At the conclusion, special awards were distributed to participants. India International Trade Fair 2023 turned out to be a great success. It will now return next year. Shubhendu Ghosh's report for DD India.
All right, it will also be curtains down for IFFI today. Hollywood actor and producer Michael Douglas will be honoured with Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award at the 54th edition of the International Film Festival of India. He walked the red carpet at IFFI with his actor wife, Katharina Zeta-Jones.
Hollywood actor and producer Michael Douglas, along with wife Catherine Zeta-Jones and son Dylan Douglas, today marked their presence at the International Film Festival of India. Douglas is in Goa to receive the prestigious Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award at 54th IFFI. After walking the red carpet, the family interacted with the Indian press.
Our family loves India. This is our 4th visit. The first 3 times we're to the north. And now we have the pleasure and the joy and the honor of being here in Goa in the south. I am very grateful to IFFI. You pronounce it IFFI. Yeah, IFFI is the best way to pronounce IFFI, to get this wonderful honor. I actually had a history of Satyajit Ray back in college in the 1960s, and taking a film class, and became aware of some of his work and projects.
The actor and producer said he, along with Indian producer Shailendra Singh, are working on a project in India.
The first time I came here years ago was the idea of making sort of a sequel to Romancing the Stone, a movie made many years ago. It was titled Racing the Monsoon. And we worked on it, and the most important part of these is the script, is the material. That's your architectural foundation. That's what everything is based upon. The truth is there's maybe 10 actors that can play the part, but nobody can repeat the structure. And we never kind of got it quite right. And also our film back then required the use of trains, a lot of trains. And of course, the best time for trains in India is not the monsoon season, which is also the time when tourism is the busiest. So it was difficult that time, but the script wasn't right. So anyway, Shailendra put his head to it, and we're working as an outline on a script that we're all interested in, and we're going to hopefully go to the next draft of the script.
Actor Catherine Zeta-Jones emphasized her favorite movie of Bollywood is Om Shanti Om. She added that she would love to be a part if given a role in Indian cinema.
Well, I've always been a huge fan of Bollywood. And being a singer and a dancer, I dreamed that maybe the British film industry would do a Bollywood-type film and I would be able to be cast in it. But I wasn't. But I would. I love it. When my kids were very small, my son will tell you that we showed him Om Shanti Om, which was one of my favorite movies.
Michael Douglas has won everything from Oscar awards to Emmy to Golden Globe to Palme d'Or at Cannes. With Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award, another prestigious award has been added to the list, registering its presence on the global stage.
We are at the last leg of the 54th edition of International Film Festival of India. Apart from other highlights, masterclasses, in conversation sessions, the biggest emphasis today was on the Hollywood duo Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, who came here, interacted with the press and unveiled their plans and what it means to be honored with Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award. Shama Mishra, DD India, Goa.
All right, from Goa, we turn focus to the North Indian city of Varanasi, which wore a magnificent look illuminated by lakhs of earthen lamps on the occasion of the festival of Dev Deepavali on Monday. Around 140 diplomats, including ambassadors and high commissioners from over 70 countries, witnessed the magnificent cultural extravaganza on the bank of Ganga.
I'm struck by the beauty of the rituals, how the flames are floating in the water, and I feel an air of expectation, like maybe something will appear, or that the veil between the worlds is very thin here in Varanasi.
This is, I mean, it's always a very emotive experience to be here in Varanasi and witness the magnificence of this city, but also the celebration that that brings us here today of the Dev Diwali and all the lights and the number of people that are here celebrating. This is a very important moment. So we're very happy to be here with the Chief Minister of the state of Uttar Pradesh and other members of the diplomatic community.
Up next, we'll take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. The Election Commission of India on Monday issued notice to the state government of Karnataka for violation of Model Code of Conduct. The state government has published various welfare schemes and achievements in several newspapers in poll-bound Telangana, which has been seen as the violation of Model Code of Conduct. Indian capital city of Delhi on Monday witnessed rainfall in some parts, bringing down the temperature and also improved the air quality in the city. At least 16 flights were diverted after operations at the capital's airport were impacted because of the heavy rain and lightning. Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra reaches the Indian state of Odisha. On this occasion, people welcomed the awareness vehicle ceremoniously. Various schemes of the central government for welfare of the people were shown through LED screen of the vehicle. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra pledge taking program was also organized on this occasion. A short break ahead, but on the other side of the break, North Korea's Kim received various photos taken by its spy satellite. US and South Korea have condemned the satellite launch. We tell you ahead more. 20 people killed in gunfire attacks on military barracks, prison and other locations, stunning Sierra Leone on Sunday. Stay with us to get the details. Christmas fervor sets in as Christmas preparations at US White House begin. We get you ahead this year's Christmas decorations unveiled by First Lady Jill Biden.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. Gaza truce extended by 48 hours. 11 more hostages freed on day 4. Efforts on in full swing to rescue 41 trapped workers in India's Uttarakhand. Rat hole mining team deployed for rescue operations. It was glitz and glamour galore at the 54th edition of International Film Festival of India that comes to a close today. The 10-day cinematic extravaganza leaves film enthusiasts thrilled and spellbound. And India to take on Australia in the third T20 international match in the northeastern Indian city of Guwahati. India lead the series 2-0. Let's get you more international updates. North Korea's ambassador made a rare appearance at the UN Security Council on Monday to defend his country's launch of a spy satellite. The 15-member body met on Monday over North Korea's November 21 spy satellite launch. At the end of the meeting, US Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield and North Korean Ambassador Kim Song made unplanned remarks, engaging in dueling rights of reply across the council table, each arguing that their countries are acting defensively.
The DPRK claims it's acting in self-defense, but the self-defense really does not stand here, as the U.S. and ROK military exercises, as you know, are routine and they're defensive in nature. And we intentionally reduce risk and pursue transparency by announcing the exercises in advance, including the dates and the activities, unlike the DPRK. And unlike the DPRK's launches using ballistic missile technology, these actions are not prohibited by UN Security Council resolutions. So we reject strongly the disingenuous DPRK claim that its missile launches are merely defensive in nature in response to our bilateral and trilateral military exercises.
One belligerent party, the United States, is threatening us with a nuclear weapon. It is a legitimate right for the DPRK as another belligerent party to develop, test, manufacture, and possess weapon system equivalent to those that the United States have already possessed and or developing right now.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un received photographs taken by its recently launched spy satellite of White House, Pentagon and U.S. aircraft carriers in the naval base of Norfolk, state media KCNA said on Tuesday. Kim also inspected satellite photos of the Anderson Air Force Base in the U.S. Western Pacific Territory of Guam and a U.S. shipyard and airbase in Norfolk and Newport, where 4 U.S. Navy nuclear aircraft carriers and a British aircraft carrier were spotted in the photos, according to the state media Korean Central News Agency. The United States and South Korea have condemned the satellite launch as a violation of UN Security Council resolutions banning any use of ballistic technology. South Korean military has claimed that North Korea has deployed soldiers and heavy weapons at guard posts near the border following the suspension of a military accord between the two nations. Now, this comes amidst warnings from Pyongyang that it would continue to exercise its sovereign rights, including through satellite launches, while allegedly restoring demolished guard posts in several locations along its border with South Korea. North Korea's continued military activities prompted South Korea to snatch the military accord. The launch prompted South Korea to suspend a key clause in a 2018 inter-Korean military agreement and resume aerial surveillance near the border. North Korea, in turn, declared it was no longer bound by the agreement and would deploy weapons on the border with the South. DD India's correspondent Chris Gilbert joins us from Tokyo, Japan. Chris, South Korea military has put the soldiers and heavy weapons on standby mode at the guard post. At the same time, get us more details as to how grave is this development, and do we have any international reactions coming on this?
Yeah, well, the international reaction, first of all, has been largely expected. A condemnation from Japan and, the States and South Korea, of course, to the satellite launch. A lack of condemnation coming from China and Russia, which continue to accuse the U.S. of not balancing sanctions with humanitarian assistance for Pyongyang like it had promised to do. But I think, a lot of the behavior that we've seen from North Korea is largely expected. It had vowed all year to launch a satellite. It had provided a window until December that it intended to do so. It did so inside that window, well, only just. It was just immediately before that window opened, in fact. And it is vowing to do so again. It has seemingly got what it wanted, which was extra surveillance, especially of the U.S. Military facilities. But what was not really expected was the response from South Korea, which observers are saying is a very grave situation, which was the suspension of an article which had put in place no-fly zones. This was done by the previous administration in South Korea, and it was intended and had in fact de-escalated the peninsula, tensions in the peninsula. So the current administration of South Korea exhibiting that it not only perhaps doesn't intend to pursue talks with North Korea, but is intent on perhaps also actively abandoning agreements that are already in place.
Chris, with North Korea unfazed by the condemnation of US, South Korea, Japan, how do we see the situation developing in the next few days? Is the situation belligerent in the coming few days?
It's been interesting. It's hard to quantify exactly, what the tensions on the peninsula are. It has been a very quiet year so far from North Korea in terms of missile launches. We've seen about half of the projectiles launched that we saw last year. We've seen about half of the impromptu responses from South Korea that we saw last year. We have seen a lot of geopolitical maneuvering with Pyongyang getting closer to Moscow, of course, and South Korea and Tokyo getting closer and improving their relations trilaterally with the U.S. It is a small escalation, but a lot depends on how much the international community accepts North Korea's argument that it is looking to defend itself. We saw an outright rejection of that from the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations just in the intro just then. But, depending on how much the international community accepts the fact that North Korea says and feels like it has a gun pointed to its head, being told to come back to the bargaining table with U.S. nuclear-armed aircraft carriers often parked in Busan throughout the year. That depends on the international reaction to what is South Korea walking away from part of an agreement to de-escalate the peninsula and any intention from the U.S.-led forces and partners to indeed return to talks and meet North Korea where its interests are as well.
All right, Chris, in the past few weeks, we've seen how Japan, US and South Korea have come closer in the wake of North Korea's endeavors. Let us understand more from you as to how the two sides poised. Where does this confidence of North Korea stem from? At the same time, when we talk of these three countries, South Korea, Japan and the US closer, how do you analyze the situation? The positioning of these two sides?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. The US has long wanted South Korea and Japan to bury their long-running historical hatchets and get together to form the kind of trilateral agreements that we're seeing. And we are seeing a lot of trilateral meetings, especially between the foreign ministers of the US, South Korea, and Japan at the moment. Now, the administration in South Korea of Yoon Suk-yeol, who was elected president only by a very thin margin a year and a half ago, that is far more friendly towards Tokyo. It does not necessarily care about historical grievances that are still felt by the South Korean public as much as the preceding government. And the current administration in Tokyo as well is very prone to wanting to pursue anything that is in the US interests and work with the US. And so we are seeing the expedited burying of a lot of hatchets about labor disputes stemming from the Japanese colonization of the peninsula, about territorial disputes, and that is happening at the executive level. It is not necessarily trickling down to the public sentiment yet. It cannot necessarily be said that the public of these countries is feeling any warming of ties between South Korea and Japan, but it is certainly happening at the executive level, and the US is very interested in securing as many agreements with these two countries as possible while they're getting along, lest the administrations change and they have a change of heart.
All right, Chris, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those details. And continuing with updates from the Korean Peninsula, North Korea has closed down its embassy in Bangladesh, mentioning that Pyongyang would maintain relations with Dhaka through its embassy in New Delhi. North Korea communicated its decision about closure of its embassy in Dhaka to the Foreign Ministry of Bangladesh through a note verbale. The Bangladesh Foreign Ministry official told media persons in Dhaka on Sunday about the note verbale received from North Korea. It said that they are closing down embassies in Bangladesh as well as Nepal to better manage and operate their activities in the region from their New Delhi mission, said the official. The embassy in Dhaka is North Korea's 6th diplomatic mission to close since October, following those in Spain, Hong Kong, Uganda, Angola, and Nepal. North Korean officials stationed in Dhaka left Bangladesh on November 21st this year. The 5th edition of the World Nuclear Exhibition kicks off today just outside Paris. More than 650 exhibitors and 20,000 attendees from more than 70 countries are expected at what's seen as the major annual gathering for the civil nuclear industry. Let's take a look at DD India's correspondent Ross Cullen's report to get more details.
The World Nuclear Exhibition is an opportunity for countries, decision makers and stakeholders in the nuclear sector to come together, and national pavilions will represent some of the major nuclear players globally, including China, Japan, the UK, the US and France. Speakers include the heads of the International Energy Agency and the International Atomic Energy Agency, the EU's industry chief, and a range of voices from the private sector. France is arguably the biggest European nuclear power, from the military side and its nuclear deterrent to the civil setup, with 70% of its electricity coming from nuclear energy due to a long-standing policy based on energy security. Earlier this year, President Macron announced 6 new civil nuclear reactors will be built here in the coming decades, with nuclear power at the heart of the country's drive for carbon neutrality by 2050. France and India are working together on what could become the world's largest nuclear power plant, the Jaitapur project. EDF is hoping to build the world's largest civilian atomic infrastructure on the Indian Ocean coast, about 400 kilometres from Mumbai. Both countries have also joined forces to explore the potential of small modular reactors and advanced modular reactors. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi's trip here in July, France and India agreed on a proposal from French energy firm EDF to train Indian engineers and technicians specialising in civil nuclear power. The environmental challenges, advantages and concerns around nuclear power will be at the heart of many of the meetings and talks to be held at the exhibition over the next couple of days. And given the current climate and energy crisis, the theme for this 5th edition of the World Nuclear Exhibition is connecting nuclear to the world, rising to the energy and environmental challenges. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
In the latest development, the British Museum rejected the return of Parthenon sculptures, claiming that possession is 9/10 of the law. Who knew antiquities had lawyers? Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis accused British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of abruptly cancelling a planned meeting in London over the dispute regarding the Parthenon sculptures. Athens has long demanded the permanent return of the ancient sculptures removed by British diplomat Lord Elgin in the 19th century. Mitsotakis expressed annoyance at the cancellation and also emphasized Greece's stance on the issue, hoping for a discussion with his British counterpart. The British Museum, however, has consistently refused to return the sculptures. Sunak's office declined to explain the cancellation. Irish trade union members and supporters rallied in Dublin to denounce the riots triggered by stabbing of 3 young children last week. Demonstrators held banners that said, "Fight the fascist threat" and "Unity over division," marking a solidarity for workers attacked during the riots. Earlier, police had blamed far-right agitators for starting the violation on the last week after the stabbing incident in Dublin's Parnell Square. Officials have not ruled out any angle, including terror, keeping quiet about the detained suspect's motives and his personal details. In attacks on military barracks, prison and other locations in Sierra Leone on Thursday, 20 people were killed and nearly 2,000 inmates escaped. The assailants started gunfire across the capital, Freetown, in the early hours, shocking the West African nation. The government later informed that the attacks had been dealt with. Of the 20 dead include 13 soldiers, 3 assailants, a police officer, a civilian and a private security personnel. 8 other people were wounded and 3 were arrested. Some 1,890 inmates escaped from the Pandemba Road Central Prison after the attackers broke in, the prison officials informed, adding that only 23 returned so far. Poland's President Andrzej Duda on Monday swore in members of new government who will need to get vote of confidence within 2 weeks, claimed as a farce by the opposition parties intended to delay them from taking power after they won a majority in October's election. Despite the opposition alliance led by former Prime Minister Donald Tusk winning majority seats and eager to form the government, President Duda called on the Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki to do so. Now, Morawiecki needs to win the confidence vote in 2 weeks' time, which seems highly unlikely due to the number of seats. Niger's junta on Saturday revoked an anti-migration law that had helped reduce the flow of West Africans to Europe and announced it on Monday evening on state television. The law, which made it illegal to transport migrants through Niger, was passed in May 2015 as the number of people traveling across the Mediterranean Sea from Africa reached record highs. Now, this created a political and humanitarian crisis in Europe, where governments came under pressure to stop the influx. The number of migrants moving through Niger dropped sharply over the years because of the law. A severe winter storm hit the Crimean Peninsula on Sunday. Almost 500,000 people were left without power. The Russian governors of Crimea and Sevastopol declared a state of emergency in the 2 regions. The authorities said that 1 person died and 10 were injured, while more than 350 people have been evacuated. All schools were closed on Monday and residents were urged to stay indoors. We now take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world. Peruvian authorities on Monday destroyed more than 19 tons of illegal drugs. Authorities had confiscated drugs in several different operations during 2023 that include cocaine and marijuana, among others. Now, this was the country's 4th massive drug burn this year. Christmas preparations at the U.S. White House begin as First Lady Jill Biden unveils this year's decorations. The theme for this year is of magic, wonder and joy. The decorations celebrate the 200th anniversary of the holiday classic storybook, The Night Before Christmas. London's Charles Dickens Museum turns into a festive haven ahead of Christmas. The historic location is decked up, showcasing the holiday traditions which the English 19th century novelist and his family enjoyed at 48 Doughty Street, his London address. The festivals of Loy Krathong and Yi Peng were celebrated in Thailand's Bangkok on Monday. Loy Krathong is an annual traditional festival celebrated by Thais to pay respect to goddess of water and Lord Buddha. Yipeng is an ancient festival event traditionally celebrated to mark the end of the monsoon season and the beginning of winters. A short break ahead, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. US stocks witness a drop as markets go downwards due to weak Chinese data. New home sales also fall. Spain may move one step closer to qualifying for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. How and when? We tell you ahead. MotoGP's Rossi to do full season with BMW. Again, we tell you more after the break.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political, and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
A platform for the developing world, amplifying the voice of the global south with a focus on the growing economies, resolving the conflicts, showcasing the culture, tradition, heritage and diversity. Watch Voice of the Global South at these times on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Updates from the world of business now. US stocks closed lower on Monday following weak economic data from China. Investors were also digesting data showing new home sales fell last month due to soaring mortgage rates. Let's take a look at DD India correspondent Sally Patterson's report.
Last week, the US indices reached their highest levels since August. It was a quiet week on Wall Street with markets closed for Thanksgiving. New data released on Monday showed sales of newly constructed homes fell 5.6% in October, more than expected. According to the report from the US Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Census Bureau, sales were up 17.7% from a year ago. Higher mortgage rates have dampened demand. All eyes are on the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Report for October, which is due out on Thursday. It's the Federal Reserve's favoured inflation gauge and could give an indication of the central bank's next move at its rate decision next month. At the close of trading Monday, the Dow and the S&P both closed down 0.2% and the Nasdaq was flat. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Germany's government has announced an additional budget which lifts the country's self-imposed borrowing limit due to the High Court ruling. Chancellor Olaf Scholz's administration is allocating around 45 billion euros to deal with the crisis affected by the pandemic and energy crisis. The debt brake was extended to allow increased borrowing in 2023 and possibly cuts in ministry spending in 2024. The opposition party had warned of a possible legal action if the government attempts another suspension next year. A quick look at sports now. Talking of cricket first, India and Australia will face each other again on Tuesday in Guwahati in the 5-match T20 series. India, led by new captain Suryakumar Yadav, is leading by 2-0 against Australia. So far, it augurs well for Team India with 9 T20 matches in the fray, including the one to be played on Tuesday in the northeastern state of Assam. On to soccer now. Spain women's national football team will continue their UEFA Nations League campaign while hosting Italy later this week. Spain tops League A Group 4 with Sweden following behind as the second team. Now this team will not witness Ballon d'Or winner Alexa Putellas's play, who withdrew due to knee injury. Though the aftermath of Rubel's affair seemed to eclipse their winning campaign, the World Cup champions look ahead to qualify for the semi-finals. Spain may move one step closer to qualifying for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris, as it seems poised to clinch first place and runners-up in the National League final scheduled in February. More from soccer. The Champions League match in Paris will witness Newcastle United and Paris Saint-Germain engaged in a head-to-head battle, giving their all out in the defining match. Newcastle, who thrashed Chelsea 4-1 on Saturday, find themselves in a tricky Group F encounter with all 4 teams in which a chance of progressing to the last 16 is there. While PSG, placed in the same group, hope to use home advantage in Tuesday's game. The team lost 4-1 when they played Newcastle in October, although Paris Saint-Germain have won their last 6 league games, propelling them on top of League One, which makes it a battle worth watching. PSG are second in Group F on 6 points, 1 point behind Dortmund and 1 point ahead of Milan, with Newcastle on 4 points. Valentino Rossi becomes the first world champion to compete in a full season of FIA World Endurance Championship. 9 times world champion Rossi will race for BMW in the new LMGT3 category of the FIA World Endurance Championship. The champion, who also owns the VR46 MotoGP team, will be making his Le Mans 24 Hours debut next June. The 44-year-old Italian won a Road to Le Mans support race this year. With that, we end this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.